on what we're doing for young people with the money. So first up on what's quite a packed agenda, we have Sue Ormson from the National Lottery Community Fund. Now Sue is speaking probably more to the history than anything else, because obviously back to the BBO program and ESF, which was the precursor to UK Shared Prosperity Fund. But I thought that would be a good introduction. So as we've got quite a lot on the agenda today, I'll hand over to Sue.
Thanks, Jack. Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm going to share some slides, just a few slides. So I'm just going to try and bring those up. Okay, there we are. Can everybody see those okay? Good. Okay, good. Right. So I'll just talk slowly whilst people carry on coming into the room. And lots of beeps. Okay, so as Jack said, I'm going to talk a little bit about building better opportunities compared to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Obviously, we're not delivering or managing the UK Shared Prosperity Fund at all. So I am speaking secondhand about the Shared Prosperity Fund here, but I can tell you a little bit. So I'm just going to move on. And I apologise for the acronyms. I think you all know them, but I don't like acronyms. It's just that the words are too lengthy. Okay, so I thought I'd start with some basic numbers about European Social Fund, which I'm sure you already know, but it's helpful, I think, just to go back to the basics. So European Social Fund was a programme from officially 2014 to 2020, although it did carry on until December 2023 because the EU has a rule that programmes can carry on delivery 3 years after the official end of the programme. So it's quite hard to get the figures because the official evaluation of the European Social Fund hasn't yet been published. But from what I could read, and other speakers might contradict me on this, but from what I could read, £1.9 billion was focused on inclusive labour markets over the course of ESF. And that supported over 7 million participants on programmes across England. The figures I found showed that more than 700,000 found work, with 260,000 gaining basic skills. But those are very low. So I'm not really sure that they are the end of programme figures. We'll have to wait for the evaluation to come out on that. But that's what I found. Building Better Opportunities, obviously I do know about this. This was a programme delivered by the National Lottery Community Fund, 50% funded by us and 50% from European Social Fund. So it was a programme of £600 million, started delivery in 2016 and carried on delivery until March 2023. And it was aimed at people who are furthest from the labour market. We supported over 180,000 people through 130 different projects, all partnership projects, all over England, and 34% of that 180,000 moved into employment. And interesting to note that 21% of all participants were young people. All projects were able to support young people from age 15 onwards, but we had about half a dozen projects that were specifically aimed only at young people. And overall, out of the 180,000, 21% were young people aged 16 to 25. So obviously, as you know, when we left the EU, the government agreed that there will be alternative funding and that it would be free or freer from the bureaucracy associated with European funding. So first of all, we have the Community Renewal Fund, 220 million launched in 2021-22 as a precursor, a preparation for the Shared Prosperity Fund. And then Shared Prosperity Fund launched in 2022. But as you know, the funding for people and skills was not made available until 2023 and would have been later had it not been for your lobbying and ERSA's lobbying to get it brought forward. But even so, it wasn't made available in every part of England. And I believe that the amount of funding for the Shared Prosperity Fund is 2.6 billion, but that's across all three investment pillars. And I don't have the figures for the amount of funding that is for people and skills. I'm not sure if that's available yet, but I certainly don't have it. So early reflections on the Shared Prosperity Fund. Well, the early reflection is that it is reduced funding compared to what we had with the European Social Fund. There definitely was a gap for most people. The Building Better Opportunities, for example, I mentioned, finished in March 2023. And the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, for some, they still haven't got any funding, or some have got small amounts of funding. So there was a gap, and that led to a loss of skills and expertise among staff. The local authority commissioning of the Shared Prosperity Fund, it was up to local authorities what they commissioned and how they commissioned it. So some, for example, opted for in-house delivery. Some opted not to spend any of their funding on people and skills at all. And some local authorities have got very little experience of commissioning this type of provision. So they stuck to the processes and procedures that had been developed for the European Social Fund. In other words, they continued with that bureaucracy and paperwork. It's certainly much shorter term funding than the European Social Fund, which, as you know, was a 6-year programme, even if it was divided into 3-year chunks. And the funding landscape has been fragmented. When we went out to offer grants out for building better opportunities, we did it at a LEP area. That was the way that it was designed. And now it is at the lower level of local authorities at the unitary end for a lot of areas. So whereas some LEP areas had 14 or more even unitary authorities, now grant holders, providers have got to discuss, talk to, negotiate with all 14 to get any funding from them rather than just one body. So the issues that this has led to, issues in themselves, but also reduced capacity of voluntary organisations without funding, clearly, or not as much funding, but increased need from the community. And the funding that is available, not being as much, has led to limited support that can be offered. So for some projects, they can offer quite restricted employment support only, but they can't offer that wraparound support that we know is so important for other issues like debt, homelessness, mental health, confidence building. Quite a lot of voluntary and community sector organisations are closing. I know from my experience of BBO, quite a few of our grant holders projects organisations have closed. And obviously we're here today because we're worried about a potential cliff edge in 2023 when the UK Shared Prosperity Fund ends. And what we really want to do is use our learning from past experience. We've all got so much great learning and really helpful stuff, if only we could feed it in and get it used. So for example, everything that we heard in building better opportunities, the importance of long-term funding, and how everybody wants long-term funding, they don't want short funding. That's really no help. Taking a more relational approach to grants and contracts rather than a transactional approach. Certainly the European funding pushed us all down a transactional path. That is true. We at the fund, we tried to be more relational in our approach. We weren't able to do it as much as we wanted, but we did try, and I think that's so important to lead to more of a fair approach where funding will cover all of the costs that you encounter, from core costs to all of the costs that you need to spend on a participant or a beneficiary to support all of their needs. That flexibility of support and delivery that comes with that, and the recognition of the importance of that, the recognition of how important soft outcomes are. Our project said to us, if we can't build somebody's confidence, they're probably not going to get a job, and if they do get one, they're probably not going to stay in it. So building confidence is really key. It's not just a nice to have soft outcome, it's really fundamental. And some of those other barriers to employment, like debt or mental health issues or addiction or homelessness, they're not soft issues. So overcoming those are not soft outcomes, they're really important fundamental outcomes. So some recognition of those and funding for them. And having that personalised delivery that enables all of a person's barriers to be taken into account and supported. Supporting employers, if you don't engage employers and support them and support the participants once they're in work, then it's not going to be successful either. So having that funding for employer engagement and support as well. Using partnerships, that was one of the key parts of learning that came out of building better opportunities, to have partnerships from voluntary and community sector. I think we proved the value of having the involvement of the voluntary and community sector, who are on the ground, can reach the participants, understand them, can meet their needs, are trusted organisations, and can bring real results. And working on a wider geographic area in some of those areas, it would just be so much more cost effective and beneficial. So that's my short summary of the differences and the comparison of Building Better Opportunities and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. I hope that's been helpful to start the event, and hopefully we'll carry on with very rich discussion and more information. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks a lot, Sue. I think that's a really, really good introduction, both on where we are now and sort of where we've come from with this. If anyone wants to put their hand up and any questions for Sue before we move on, or also in the chat, a few minutes or a few seconds. Perhaps you've done such a fantastic overview, Sue, that nobody has any questions.
I'm sure they will have later.
Yeah, in which case, we're going to move on now to Whitehead Ross. I believe Ian and Liam are going to give a joint presentation. So if you want to share your screen, if you have slides, I'll just spotlight both of you now.
Perfect. Hey, can you see the first slides?
Yeah, that's up now.
Yeah, fab. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ian Ross. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Whitehead Ross Education, and I've got my colleague Liam Jones joining this afternoon. So, Liam, if we take it in turns, maybe with the slides, and we can be like the Chuckle Brothers, can't we? To you, to me, to you. So in terms of just a brief background about us, we're an education and social welfare organisation. We've been going just over 12 years now, so we have 15 different offices spread out across South Wales and Southern England, from Cornwall all the way through to Kent. We deliver various employability programmes, adult education, programmes for young people who are not in education, employment and training. And we've now got a team of 126 staff spread out across those 16 offices that I just refer to.
Our youth engagement programme, which covers the whole of the county in Cornwall, is designed to support 16 to 24-year-olds to a positive destination. So whether that's into employment or further learning or education. The programme is really good in as much as we've got the ability to offer mental health support through our CBT and BACP accredited counsellors and wellbeing coaches. But we also offer work experience, work tasters, and then we offer a number of accredited and non-accredited courses, such as the CSCS card for construction.
So our UK Shared Prosperity Fund project, it started in January 2024, so it's only been going 10 months or so, and it's due to run up until March next year, when all UK Shared Prosperity Fund provision comes to an end. We were delivering youth engagement programmes in Cornwall before 2024 through the European Social Fund. So the UK Shared Prosperity Fund enabled us to kind of continue with some of those programmes, and particularly traineeships, which came to an end last August.
So as part of the programme, we have various different areas that we focus on, and work preparation being one of them. One of the areas is life skills. So our life skills are designed to equip young people with the skills and knowledge to overcome barriers through that, whether that's confidence building, motivation, or health issues. We also cover topics such as health, well-being, physical activities. We also combine it with cultural trips. So we've done a number of trips to different places within Cornwall, so the zoo, the Eden Project, other places that we can take people. And then we also offer employability skills. So we offer the Disability and Guilds Level 1 award in employability skills. In addition, we support young people to access mainstream services, so support with housing, health, and other kinds of advice.
One thing that is slightly different compared to other programmes, so often there's lots of duplication or sometimes competition with other programmes, but one thing which we found really helpful is our counselling that we provide. So we have 3 counsellors who provide cognitive behaviour therapy. They're all accredited by the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. But one thing which is worth flagging up, so some of you may have read the Work and Pensions Parliamentary Select Report last, I think it was published about June or July last year. But one of the recommendations that the Parliamentary Select Report highlighted was that there needs to be better integration of health, and in particular mental health supports, along with employability. So we were particularly pleased to be able to embed some counselling, because in Cornwall, and it's no different to anywhere else across the UK, there's like 12-month waiting lists for young people to access mental health support. So we found it particularly invaluable by having 3 counsellors who can support those young people alongside the youth employment officers. So as well as having that employability support and exploring what their next steps are going to be for education, employment and training, they can simultaneously be addressing any mental health barriers they have alongside that, rather than being stuck on a lengthy 12-month NHS waiting list.
As I alluded to earlier, we offer a number of qualifications to support our participants. These include the Level 1 award in health and safety, which would lead to a CSCS card, a Level 3 award in emergency first aid in the workplace, a Level 1 award in caring for children, a City and Guilds Level 2 award in customer service, and Levels 1 and 2 functional digital skills. And in addition to this, we're looking into the possibility to offer a Gateway Level 1 in games design and development, which everyone in the office is very excited about delivering.
In terms of engaging with young people, I know Liam mentioned in one of the earlier slides, we do lots of different trips and activities to try and engage the young people first, help them to feel more comfortable with staff before we then address the employability skills and any barriers they've got. So we have to go out and actively engage with the community, whether that's with job centres, youth offending teams, third sector organisations, housing, leaving care teams, the list's endless. But one thing which we found particularly useful is having open and activity days. So we have activity days and open days, as you can see there. We've done some DJing and sound production, and it's just a great opportunity to open the our premises for people to come in and just have a little look around, be nosy, and see what's on offer before thinking about committing to joining the program.
Yeah, and part of the program is also being able to offer people access to activities that they may not be able to access as part of their daily lives. So we've organised trips to the Egen Project, Yuki Zoo, Adrenaline Quarry and Tide Climbing, to name but a few. We've got further trips to a go-karting track next week, and we also have other trips planned for the end of the year.
Yeah. And one other thing I think which has been really useful, particularly in Cornwall, the council set up a steering group with other organisations delivering other UK Shared Prosperity Fund programmes. So I think that's been particularly useful as well. So we're not chasing the same young people, trying to trip over each other, because ultimately, yes, we've got targets to meet, but it's important, as everyone will agree, to make sure that the right people are on the right programs to meet their needs. So that's a whistle-stop tour of what we've got going on in Cornwall. Just picking up at the beginning of the meeting, which may be of interest, I was speaking to one councillor in another area week before last, and they've had a letter back from the Ministry for Communities and Local Government and Housing, encouraging them to spend their UK Shared Prosperity Fund allocation, otherwise they get less next financial year. Obviously, there's been no formal announcement yet about what's going to happen to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund after March next year. But the fact this letter was sent encouraging this local authority to spend their allocation, otherwise they get less next year. To me, I find that quite encouraging. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens after the budget on the 30th of October to see if the UK Shared Prosperity Fund is going to be extended, but based on that conversation I had a few weeks ago, it looked quite promising. So we'll see what happens, won't we?
Certainly. Thank you, Ian and Liam, as well, for that. What we're going to do, because we have two other ERSA members who are going to give sort of brief overviews of their programs, and then we'll sort of circle back and do some questions as long as everyone's happy to stay with us after the next two presentations. So next up, we have Trina from Shore Trust, who I believe are delivering in London.
There, I'm just shared the presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Trina Rodden from Shore Trust. Just here today to talk about the Change project, which is the UK SPF universal needs that we're delivering in the local London grant package area. In London, there's 4 grant package areas, and we're the provider to deliver universal within local London. So Shore Trust is a leading employment charity, so we support young people and adults to achieve their full potential. We've been delivering the UK SPF project from the 1st of April and it's obviously comes to an end on the 31st of March, which you'll all be aware of, I'm sure. And I probably don't have to say what kind of the pitfalls and the difficulty in mobilising so quickly and then delivering in such a short space of time. Before I go on to tell you a little bit about what the project delivers and kind of what our outcomes have been so far, I just thought it'd be nice for you to hear from one of our young people that is on the project and how it supported them. So yeah, that just gives you a little bit of an insight into kind of what a young person's kind of thoughts are on. What I'm going to do now is I'll just talk you through what we deliver on the project. It's aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds, obviously that aren't in employment, education or training, and they have to be living in one of the 9 local London boroughs. And as it's the universal project, we work quite closely with the targeted projects in terms of if a young person has more targeted needs, then we would refer on to that project. Or of course, if they lived outside of the one of the London 9 London boroughs that we deliver in, we would refer over to the kind of recommended the project within that grant package area. So our delivery very much includes building a bespoke plan of support for each of the young people. So that includes a needs assessment where we evaluate and assess the young person's resilience in a number of areas. Through that needs assessment, our mentors are then able to build an individualised progress plan for the young person, which then they review on a regular basis. Each young person gets a dedicated mentor offering one to support, and that mentor, who's called a change maker's role, is very much there to make sure everything in that plan happens and it's reviewed and the young person can transition into a positive outcome. There's various different parts of the project to support that, which I'll kind of talk through, and you would have heard the young man there say a few things and areas of support that he'd received. So for example, we look at accredited and non-accredited courses for the young person. So it's really looking at where their needs are, where their aspirations are, and trying to match if they need something accredited or there's non-accredited support they need. So for example, we've got an online career hub which all young people get access to, which supports with employability skills and also has a wealth of kind of well-being support tools on there. We've partnered with local organisations who can actually deliver certain qualifications. So for example, we offer level 2 gym instructor or the level 2 award in working as a door supervisor. We've partnered with the Digital College, for example, to offer quite a wealth of accredited courses there. So I suppose the real thing is that we try and kind of match it to what that specific young person needs. And if it's not something we've offered before, then we try and source that so we can fund that for the young person so they can progress. So other things could be non-accredited. So it's not always that a young person needs accredited qualifications. Sometimes young people come out of doing a maybe level 3 course. So we've had graduates that come to us and they just cannot find employment. So sometimes it could be just doing things like employability skills, CV, interview skills. There is a big need around health and well-being. We know a lot of young people are suffering with this. So we have partnered with an organisation that can deliver courses around how young people perceive themselves, self-esteem, but we also have a cognitive behavioural mentor. So it's a little bit different from the previous presentation. This is using cognitive behavioural therapy approaches to deliver specialist mentoring. So it's 3 to 9 sessions, depending on what that young person's needs is. And it's more specialist mentoring to give them the tools and techniques which are quite commonly used in cognitive behavioural therapy to then kind of move forward. We've also got online in-person sessions around nutrition or yoga and other health and wellbeing topics that might come up. In terms of enabling and succeeding young people, we do deliver supported placement programs. So that's where a young person will have a supported placement with an employer, and then a job coach will work alongside them to support them and support the employer in that placement. It could be that it's a young person that has additional needs. So the job coach would support them in that placement with the idea of moving them into paid employment. And we've also got a job broker. So our job broker works with lots of different local and national employers to build relationships, to talk about kind of supporting young people. So it could be that young person just doesn't do very well at interview, but if the employer will give them a job trial, then they will be able to build that confidence and move into employment. And that's been quite successful. So there's quite a lot of construction in East London. So we've worked with quite a few construction companies where we've brought young people to experience days, they've had interviews and then been employed. And that's been coupled with giving them the CSCS qualification. So we're really trying to, for each young person, package a real pathway of support to move them into a positive outcome. So to date, so far, we have supported 573 young people on the project, and it aims to support 915. We've supported so far 211, which is 37% of young people into EAT. Our aim is at least 40% to move into EAT by March 2025. However, we are aiming for higher than that. And also talking about those softer outcomes, there are a number of softer outcomes on the contract that kind of we have KPIs to achieve. So it's not just about that final EAT outcome, it's about kind of building well-being and confidence, and just supporting, offering that support and information on finding employment and education. So kind of the range of those that we support young people with, and definitely kind of that other things around mental health and well-being, confidence, self-esteem is something that we're supporting young people with, and it kind of builds and builds. And I mean, around that health and well-being side of it, often a kind of a year contract, even with a young person that has kind of got trauma and has kind of lots of mental health issues, it's quite a short space of time when you're trying to really support those that are most entrenched in not being in work, employment or training. So just a little bit more before I finish on what young people have said. I don't know if you can read that, but I'll read it out. So my experience with the Change Project has been extremely welcoming, and I'm surrounded by such great people. My mentor does an excellent job and always supports and encourages me to strive for the best. My mentor provided several courses for me to sign up to and add to my CV, which helped increase employability. Since attending CBM, which is the Cognitive Behavioural Specialist Mentoring, I saw an increase in my confidence and mental health, and I'm very thankful for them. And then another young person said, I think the Change project has helped me realise my goals more clearly, and I have found employment very quickly as well as multiple opportunities. I've also become more confident in my own skills and my own self-belief. And then just finally, rather than hearing my voice again, I'll play a clip of a young person that did a work placement with us and has received lots of support. So yeah, thank you everybody. Yeah, I think the funding can really be put to good use. It's really had an impact on the young people we've supported, but as we all know, and it's kind of been said already, and it'll be said again, that there's a lot of challenges that are thrown up with a year funding in terms of mobilisation, recruitment and retention of staff. But thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Trina. Really good presentation. So next up we have Mark from the Prince's Trust delivering in Northern Ireland. And then I can see that there's already been a question in the chat, and we'll circle back to that after Mark's brief presentation.
Jack, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for having me along here today. I have the benefit of listening to all the brilliant presenters before, so I've been taking lots of notes as well. So yes, my name's Mark Dugan. I'm the director here for the Prince's Trust in Northern Ireland. I am the trust, many of you will know the work of the trust from various partnerships that you might have had with and referring young people to the trust as well in the past. In Northern Ireland, we work right across all of the 11 council areas. And I think the key thing for us is certainly we're working from age 11 at school age right through to age 30. Our biggest programme in Northern Ireland is actually our schools-based programme. So it's what I would call in that preventative space, where it's trying to get young people to re-engage in education. Like the other projects in the call, we've had many successful years with ESF funding. In fact, it took me a long time to change over to SPF. I kept making a boob and actually calling ESF all the time as well. Just shows you how long we actually had the funding in place. I think one of the key things for us certainly is back to what Sue had said at the start. The Community Renewal Fund was absolutely critical for us as a precursor to UK SPF in that it allowed us to try out, if you like, before we buy, new partnerships across Northern Ireland. And that's been crucial, and that has been a break from what we would have done under European social funding. Under that funding, we would have applied individually as an organisation. Under the Community Renewal Fund, it allowed us to build brand new partnerships with the community sector, the voluntary sector in Northern Ireland. And I think the crucial thing is we have really successfully landed on what we call Youth Start, a project. We're one of the partners, we're not the lead partner, of 7 youth organisations. So what that has enabled us to do is actually, instead of being in competition with those other organisations in terms of young people and coming along to our services, we're actually coordinating our services together as part of a steering group. And it's enabled us, it has been challenging at times, but we're certainly in a very good place in terms of that partnership, what we formed just over a year and a half ago. So to take you back for a second, in Northern Ireland, UK SPF has actually supported 18 separate projects, and all of the projects, bar one, are consortiums. And the expectation was set by the department, by DLUC, very early on, that they wanted to see more strategic partnerships across Northern Ireland. The partnerships, the 18 projects across Northern Ireland over a 2-year period from April 23, when the project started here. So we've started much earlier than many other parts of the UK, you're probably getting the sense of. attracted £57.6 million across the whole of Northern Ireland, 18 projects over 2 years. So what you're sensing as well is, unlike other parts of the UK, the funding is being administered directly by the department for Levelling Up, and they have set up a team. Prior to April 23, they set up a team in Northern Ireland that represents the department that are administering the funding directly. Now, in Northern Ireland, we have traditionally always had European social funding delivered by a government department, the Department for the Economy here in Stormont. So it's something that the whole sector, the voluntary sector, lobbied quite hard on before the lead up to UK SPF to continue with. What that meant is it didn't fragment the funding across our 11 local councils. It also meant that it challenged projects in terms of being much more strategic. So there was no, if you like, boundaries created between councils where a recipient potentially couldn't access the Belfast, if you like, boundary, council boundary to get support. They can cross over boundaries. Northern Ireland is quite a small place, so it enables recipients to travel across Northern Ireland to receive the support they need as well. So that has been a hugely positive experience for, certainly for the voluntary sector in Northern Ireland. I think what was not a positive experience is when the funding landed. It literally was on the 11th hour. I say that because it was about 12 hours before European funding stopped. So we did, like other projects have called out as well, we had, and I think Sue, you'd call this, we lost the skills and expertise. Traditionally, when you go through European funding, when you come to the end of a tranche over 3 years, people move on. And certainly the voluntary sector really suffered as a result of that in Northern Ireland 2 years, nearly 2 years ago. And it's starting to happen again because the voluntary sector can only offer out fixed term contracts now at this stage because they don't have sight of the funding beyond March 25. I think I could talk about what the projects do, but I think it was important to start with the fact that the Youth Start project, which involves organisations in Northern Ireland, one that's called Youth Action, which is the lead partner, incredibly brilliant organisation, Include Youth, Our Good Selves, Start 360. The BITES project was a technology project, and importantly, to answer the point that was made in the chat there earlier, we have Northern Ireland Youth Forum involved as well. So there was an extensive consultation with young people as part of the Community Renewal Fund to ask them what kind of support they needed, but also how they would need that support administered to them as well and delivered. And that is the specialist area of that particular partner that they bring to the table. That, for example, led to what I think it was Ian, your good self, had mentioned about having mental health support built in, if you like, wrapped round a pastoral care approach, wrapped round the services, but also an instant access approach for young people who were really struggling with their mental health and couldn't get access through the CAM service, child and adult mental health support here in Northern Ireland, which is on its knees at the minute as a statutory service as well. So we actually have a consultant that's in the Belfast Centre here 3 days a week, providing that support and expertise as well to our wider team. And it's incredible. It's really highly valued by the wider consortium and really highly valued by my team here in Northern Ireland as well. I think the key thing certainly to call out is the pathways that we have to develop for young people. One of the things that we have found very, very challenging in Northern Ireland is 100% of the young people that we support as part of our consortium have to be economically inactive. And I know other parts of the UK, it's a percentage, it's 50%, 60%, 40%, different percentage, depending on what council, local authority area you go to. I think for us, the start was difficult because when you ask young people as part of the profiling exercise, have they been seeking work in the last 4 weeks and seeking work in the next 2 weeks? You just don't ask that question in that way. You just don't go there because, first of all, young people will struggle to understand what you're actually asking them. Secondly, being quite official as well, it can actually automatically get young people to say, yes, I am seeking work, when in actual fact, the only way that qualifies for economic inactivity is them to say they're not seeking work. So therefore, we couldn't count those young people. So that was something that the consortium had to learn quite quickly in terms of how we work with young people to do that. We still struggle because young people always want to be very proactive and say, I'm seeking work as well. So it means that we can only count young people who are proven to be economically inactive. The other key thing is the outcomes that we're expected to get for young people. There's some quite small steps, and other projects will understand this as well. Small steps in the sense that they go and seek to a job centre advisor, that they get a qualification, and also into sustained work for 6 months as well. And the difficulty is that some young people are quite transient and they change their telephone numbers quite a bit as well. So keeping in contact with young people to prove that they're in sustained work, it can be quite challenging at times for the consortium. But we've learned on our feet, as we always do in this sector. I know all of you from the voluntary sector are incredibly resilient and incredibly innovative in how you actually go about supporting groups, but also proving to funders that the evidence is clearly there as well. So that has certainly been a very challenging thing for us to achieve. But overall, in terms of the numbers of young people we supported, we said we would support 2,300 young people across the whole consortium over 2 years to March next year. We've just, as of the end of last month, supported 2,000 young people. So we're on track to hit our target that way. But also importantly, we've had 350 young people into employment. And of those 350 young people, 154 are in sustained employment. And they're all economically inactive young people. They have a range of challenges. And again, you'll all be very familiar with this. Challenges in terms of caring responsibilities at home, particularly young mothers as well. Challenges around lived experience with mental health and physical disabilities as well. And I think one of the things the consortium has learned a lot about is how we work with other referral partners, as we call it. So, for example, I suffer from hearing loss, and we work very closely with Action for Hearing Loss here in Belfast, and they have really strong expertise in supporting young people in their premises. But we bring the employability support. So we've joined up rather than expecting young people to come to our centres as a consortium. We go to them, we go to the referral partners. Another hugely positive thing that's happened is the support that we provide to refugee and asylum seekers. So certainly at the start of the contract, the funder would not allow us to support asylum seekers. Only until they got the refugee status could they be counted along with other young people who are economically inactive. And that has been quite challenging because we want to make sure that we're keeping our doors open. Like all of us here, we will never, ever refuse a young person who comes to us for support. So we've continued to support a blend of young people who are economically inactive and can be counted alongside other young people who are unemployed. But we do not count those young people towards this particular project. That has been quite challenging because at the end of the day, you've only so much resource and capacity in place to support young people. But I think we've been quite successful there. I think certainly just to round off, I agree, first of all, with all of the points that have been made. I think they're really important points. I think the confidence, building young people's confidence is an incredibly important way to help young people aspire to the next steps in terms of what they do with their lives. I certainly, I know the power of a trust. I've been here for 14 years now in working with employers. So we've had some huge success with young women, for instance, going on to work with Citigroup, where we've provided a very tailored, bespoke, hybrid style program that enables them to build the training around their particular responsibilities, childcare responsibilities, and step into apprenticeships with Citigroup. We've done lots more of that with the tech sector. It's a growing sector here in Belfast. Our bread and butter for many years has always been working with M&S and Tesco's in retail contracts, but we're seeing a downturn in that as well. And I think the critical thing is looking to the next 5 months going forward, like all of you, we're really concerned about that cliff edge moment on the 31st of March. We're already seeing that the skills being lost to the sector. I think in a major positive, the sector in Northern Ireland has never before have I seen it with one voice, one unified voice, galvanised really in making sure we're activating local ministers, MPs going to Westminster, MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly here in Stormont as well. And only in the past few weeks, we've had a number of visits from ministers from Westminster, and I think that's been incredibly positive. It's something we'll continue to focus on, and I believe that the 30th of October, and Ian, just to listening to what you said earlier about some of the, if you like, the drip feeding of information that's coming out, I believe that the 30th of October and the budget by the government is going to be a crucial moment where we understand that the department for levelling up and housing and local government has actually successfully positioned this fund in terms of an extension by a year with the Treasury. And I think that's where it sits at the minute. It's not a case of the department not supporting it going forward. It's more of a case of all of the asks on the Treasury and actually how much the government can afford to fund. But all in all, I think the lesson I've taken away, and something has been very positive, is the way that the whole sector is now working in partnership. It's been crucial, and it has meant that it's opened up another door of funding for us here in Northern Ireland with Peace Plus. European Peace Plus money continues to flow into Northern Ireland, given our legacy issues around the Troubles. And we're now working in another consortium as part of it going forward as well. So again, thank you, everyone. I know there's probably some questions in all of your mind. And Jack, once again, thanks for having me along today.
No worries at all. Thank you very much, Mark. I think that's a really interesting kind of comparison point in terms of it working slightly different in Northern Ireland than it does in England and other parts of the UK. And I think you're right about the budget being very important for this going forward. So I think everyone in one way or another has answered the question we got asked in the chat. I think, Mark, you did during your presentation, and Trina and Ian have answered it in the chat. So if anyone wants to put their hand up or to put anything else in the chat, I can read it out. Well, in that case, I think we'll move on to the final presentation. So we're very lucky to be joined by Sharon Wheatman from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, who's going to give a bit of a commissioner perspective and also speak about some ideas for the future of UK SPF.
Thank you, Jack. I'm feeling some pressure now, if you're feeling very, very lucky having me on last. I think I will probably reflect a lot of the things that we've heard already. But yeah, I'm just going to share. I've got some of my colleagues from Greater Manchester on the call as well, so they may heckle. Hopefully they will agree with what I share. But I'm going to share a little bit of a journey for us from ESF into UK SPF and how we've approached that, and then kind of what we think might be next for us. So I will just share my screen. Excellent. So I'm going to assume everybody can see that. I'll just start. Yeah, Jack's nodding. Excellent. So I will start with our European Social Fund NEAT delivery as a kind of start point on our journey. So we had a NEAT support programme which ran from January 2022 to September 2023, and this was split into two main contracts which supported young people aged 15 to 18 and then 18 to 24, with quite a deliberate crossover at the age of 18 so that we could make sure young people got the right support for them, depending on where they were at in their particular journey. So over that period, we engaged and supported 5,357 young people, and the total budget for both of those contracts was just over 10 million. So we've got a full evaluation. If anybody would like to see that, I can pop it in the chat. But the kind of main 3 points that we got from our evaluation through delivering that was there was a lot of process. So we're all familiar with ESF, so would agree with that. There was a lot of paperwork, some really stringent rules around evidence and what was acceptable and what wasn't. And, you know, that didn't always help us target the right young people, and a very strict timescale in terms of how long young people could be supported for, which was part of the payment by results model that we'd established within that. There was definitely increased complexity of barriers for those young people from what we'd seen before, and that really needed a different type of programme to be established. And I think the overarching recommendation for us that we really took on board was that there were some brilliant things were delivered through that, but just by the very nature of the fact it was Greater Manchester wide, it was prime contractors, meant that it couldn't be quite as bespoke as we wanted it to. And really what we needed to look at going forward was a more place-based offer. So alongside that, as we were coming towards the end of European Social Fund funding, we did a GM-wide survey across anyone who was delivering careers advice, employment support, mentoring, really any kind of support to young people. And we asked them to share kind of, what are you doing, where are you based, what kind of young people can you support in terms of barriers and age ranges, and how are you funded and when does it finish? So the slide there just gives you the really stark picture that we had, that coming up to June 2023, there was no GM-wide funding for young people aged 15 to 18, and we were really, really worried about that. At that point in time, UK SPF People and Skills still had the April 2023 and 2024 rather start date for provision, and we didn't want to wait that long and leave our young people potentially with gaps in that provision. So we identified some funding and we went earlier, which meant that we could go live with our NEET offer kind of October, November 2023. And the model that we established, which I'll run through in a minute, meant that we could effectively have continuity right throughout, because many of our providers continued to provide, and so we got that continuity for our young people. What that also meant, when the government did say you could deliver earlier but there wasn't any extra money, is that we'd already built that process in and started our commissioning process, which meant that we were able to kind of be live on those dates, which was great for us. So our initial specification was that's really tiny writing, isn't it? So it's the middle tier of this diagram, which I will talk through. But we made a decision that we weren't going to do it as a traditional commission. We weren't going to go out to a prime contractor, but we would actually put out funding directly into our 10 local authorities, with allocations based on kind of NEET and unknown levels over an average of a year at the point that we were going out to commission. So we wanted to be really clear that this wasn't a kind of, you have to bid and you have to go up against each other. It was very much about this, we're going to allocate based on the need in your area. We have a specification of what we would expect to be within that. But the reason that we wanted to put the money into localities is so that we could really get a truly place-based offer, because each of our 10 local authorities is different. Their communities are different. We wanted to enable our locality areas to be able to say, I want to target those wards, or I want to target those young people, or I want to do something in, that specifically targets the needs that we know we have it in our borough. So the specification was basically it was around enhanced engagement and support. It was not delivering more of the RPA statutory duty. It was for those young people who were either risk of NEET in year 11, enhanced tracking to find those young people who were unknown, and engagement for young people who were inactive, not ready, needed that longer term enhanced support. We also put in there to support year 12s who were dropping out, and we'd seen increased levels of that. So we built that in. And we also asked for embedded mental health support. So again, a real recognition that we'd seen increases in anxiety, low-level mental health. We've got very long waiting lists for kind of mental health support. So again, we left it very much open to our localities to decide, would that be brought in? Would it be part of the standard offer? And in every area, we left our localities the ability to say, we're going to commission that delivery, we're going to deliver it in-house, we can do a mix. It was very much left to what was right for that place. The other thing that we have had through our UK SPF is an additional fund, which was to deliver community grants, which could be for very small, very bespoke offers within communities. And again, we kind of said within the NEET support, we knew that we had enhanced support needed for young people who were home educated, seen a real increase in their likelihood to become NEET. Our hidden NEET young people, supported apprenticeship pathways that we've done some pilots on, and specific communities who we've done some pilots, and we know that something very bespoke, very small groups of young people works better. So we had the community grants fund as well, which kind of gave that flexibility that, you know, if you need something more enhanced and you just need a bit more provision in your area, you could help to shape that offer as well. So in total, for our UK SPF NEET programme, we have allocated just coming up to £6.5 million at the moment. So quick overview of kind of where we are and what we've learned and how some of that delivery has changed over the last year, since last October. We put out our grant agreements, as I said, to our 10 local authority areas, where the allocations were done based on NEET and unknown data, and we did go live autumn last year. But some of the issues that we found as we started to go live were we had to find the right model. So we've had a few lessons to learn, I think, quite quickly about us not commissioning in the way that we had done before, and how we've tried to respond to changes in our NEET cohort and in kind of different challenges that we've had around what the offer needs to look like. I think we're on a journey, but we're getting there now. And I think some of our providers who had delivered under ESF needed a little bit of transition time to move into the different model, because we have operated quite differently. And I think when you're used to one way of doing things, it is quite, I think it was a trust thing in a lot of ways to kind of go, so we can do that, so we can flex in that way, we can do things differently. So that's been quite a learning curve for us. We went live with the programme at a point when we had a growing demographic of 16 to 18-year-olds, and within that growing demographic, increasing levels of NEET and inactivity. And what we've quite quickly started to get feedback from our local authorities was that young people were being really successfully engaged and kind of brought out of their bedrooms and brought out of kind of the kind of disengaged, inactive point that they were at in their life, but they weren't ready for an apprenticeship. They weren't ready to go into big mainstream colleges, and there was a real lack of provision in communities to kind of refer into. And as everybody said, there were concerns about funding post March 25. That's my typo. So yeah, we were quite worried about what's next after UK SPF. So some of the things that we have done over the last year is we used more of our UK SPF to establish a growth fund, so to reflect that kind of growth in the demographic and changing kind of demands. We put out a process for our areas to bid in and say, actually, yeah, we can support this many more young people through this programme. We need this much funding. Learning for us in that was that it's not just as easy as we'll give you some money and you can magically support more young people, because you do need the staff and you do need the resource, and that can take some time. So we've been reflecting on that for the future. We also, when we looked at the feedback around lack of that kind of transitional provision, we released some further funding for direct commissioning of local providers, which has yielded some successes, but again, learning for us, again, just because we can give you the money doesn't mean you can quickly get through your commissioning and do kind of all the things that you need to do to kind of get it out. So I think there's something definitely for us about timescales. The other thing that we have done, though, is we were very mindful of March 2025 and that kind of potential cliff edge again. So we have identified funding and extended all of the locality agreements to deliver until at least September 2025. And that's really with the intention that we will know what is happening with national funding at that point, and we will be able to utilise that. But we wanted to give everyone the confidence that, you know, you don't need to look for another job. There is, you know, there we will be continuing into the future. So we've released that funding. So our lessons learned overall is that, yeah, the funding's great, but actually we need to have a more joined up approach to what does our commissioning cycle look like? What do our locality commissioning cycles look like? How quickly can providers respond? And quite a lot around communication of different information governance processes and how different organisations operate. And we're working to try and get that more joined up for all of Greater Manchester now. We've had some really great feedback that one of the things we did was we under ESF, we had a 9-month maximum support timescale for young people. We've removed that and said, do the right thing, however long it takes. So initial feedback that we're starting to gather now is that where a payment by results model can disincentivize you supporting those who are really far away and really need a lot of intensive support and will take longer to support. Actually taking that away means that our localities are able now to engage those young people. One of the things that we have seen as well is our unknown levels are the lowest they've ever been. So again, you know, really positive aspects of the work in terms of finding young people, but also offering the right support. The place-based approach that we've taken again to commissioning has enabled our localities to fund new providers, so kind of boxing clubs, not boxing gloves, boxing clubs, for instance, and working with kind of youth justice, anti-violence teams, so areas where a kind of traditional NEAT support team might not be able to get in and engage with young people, actually using the organisations who can. To actually get some funding to them. And again, that's helping to support the VCFSE sector. And one of the things we are looking at is we use the kind of standard UK SPF performance indicators initially to monitor how we were doing. We are looking at a kind of more enhanced, more nuanced version of that now, and we've kind of collectively recognised that this programme isn't going to massively reduce our NEAT figures straight away. It's kind of a longer term gain, and we're looking at more of that kind of 16 to 24 age range. But actually we are seeing some really amazing impacts for those young people in terms of health, well-being, confidence, all of those life skills that they need to move on. So I think our overarching learning is that yeah, our NEAT figures are staying kind of where they would be, where they were, but we genuinely feel that it would be a lot worse if we didn't have this programme and we weren't putting these steps in to actually make the change. So just one really quick case study in terms of what it means. Again, super tiny writing, but young person, 17 years old, left school due to bullying, didn't achieve expected GCSE grades, mental health challenges, and eating and sleeping issues. You can see from the support there, it wasn't kind of a traditional, let's do an action plan, let's think about kind of education and training, let's move towards work. It was very much about understanding the bullying aspects, challenging negative thoughts, getting that self-belief, starting to really think about the confidence side for that young person and embracing themselves and kind of getting in the space where they felt ready to move on. This young person is now looking to start a college course and thinking, you know, and has said, I didn't speak to anyone before I did this, but since coming to the sessions, I can communicate with others, I can express my emotions, and I've been able to become more active and the stress is lifting. And for me, that is everything that this programme was about. So what's next, really quickly? Question mark on further UK SPF. I think, again, reflecting a couple of comments earlier, we think that there will be an announcement on further funding, but yet to see what that looks like. But for us, whatever happens, we will continue to focus on our 15 to 18-year-olds. We've always flexed our funding to say we will support our young people in year 11 who are risk of need. They will turn 16 during that academic year, so we will always put that support in. But we are also looking at our integrated settlements, where we will have kind of the devolved adult skills in a wider sense funding. And what we want to do is use that to ensure there's a really successful transition for all of our young people so that they are moving into good work by the age of 24, not in the year 2024. And we are looking really hard at what does a place-based youth guarantee look like. We really welcome the government announcing the youth guarantee. We don't think 18 to 21 is the right age range, certainly within a devolved mayoral city region. We can utilise some of our adult funding and adult employment programmes to support those who are 19 to 24, but we don't have anything post UK SPF at the moment which supports those 15 to 18-year-olds. So we are developing a guarantee that will be 16 to 24. Sitting under that, we are developing and further rolling out the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, and that is very much about line of sight for all young people. But specifically over the next year, we will be establishing an inclusive pathway towards employment so that our young people who don't follow a traditional educational route will have a clear pathway that connects them to jobs. We are developing an apprenticeships accelerator, which is very much again about level 2, level 3 apprenticeships for young people, foot on the ladder. How do we do more of that? And we've partnered this year with Youth Employment UK to get our GM level data from the youth census, and we are just about to share that. Some really interesting learning, and we want to use that as the platform for our guarantee. So that's a real whistle stops tour, I think, of what we've done. Happy to take any questions, and again, happy to share any of our documentation if that would be useful to colleagues.
Thank you, Sharon. So again, put your hands up or put things in the chat. In the meantime, and before I forget, as you can see behind me, ERSA has our national conference on the 4th of December. I'm just going to stick the link for that into the chat. So if you haven't already got a ticket, you should come. There'll be lots more conversations like this, a big stream of work on youth employment stuff specifically as well, and also the Employability Awards in the evening. So just time for any last questions for Sharon. Here we go. Hi, John. Feel free to come in.
Yeah, good afternoon, Sharon. Thanks very much for that. John from Futures in Nottingham here. I was interested in that slide when you merged the, I suppose, the different strands of SPF funding across people and skills and community. Just interested how, from an operational perspective, that was managed in terms of the broad outputs and outcomes, given that the way they were defined didn't lend themselves easily for a pure people and skills delivery when your community the community side of it was very different. How was that managed to local level from a reporting and performance against those strands of activity?
Yeah, great question, John. And I luckily for me and for the organisation, I don't do the performance monitoring because it would be truly awful if I did. But the way that we approached that was we looked at the kind of the community outputs and looked at where there were targets in terms of kind of social action and increasing kind of community resilience, I suppose, and we kind of brought those across. What we did in terms of people and skills when we brought it forward, we actually identified other funding which we used to pay for that initially, but we did use UK SPF people and skills measures. So I think we were really fortunate in that we had other streams, and we did have a little bit of UK SPF underspend from the other elements which we were able to bring across, and then we looked at where we could hit similar targets and use that to kind of take it forward. And then obviously we've moved into UK SPF people and skills going forward. But as I said, we are then enhancing that to make sure we really understand, are we measuring the right things?
Great. If you don't mind me asking you one more then, Jan, do you feel in comparison with ESF, which was equally as sort of structured and to a degree restrictive in terms of certain aspects of support, do you think that SPF gave you a great degree of flexibility because you were ultimately managing those outputs and output reporting, so it potentially benefited you? And if we have a next generation of SPF, would you advocate for that over the previous sort of ESF guidelines we always used to have to work to as well?
Yes, I would say definitely. So what we were able to do with ESF was I do say this regularly, we bent it as far as we could, but we had obviously some real restrictions. I think what we've been able to do with UK SPF is say, right, those are the high level things that we need to hit. We can be more flexible now around how long will it take you to get there? What does that actually look like? What do we mean by that? And we've worked really hard with our local authorities to try and get to a point where we have enough rigor that we can show that we're doing the right thing. We're supporting our young people to move on and hit our objectives, but with a really good degree of flexibility under that to do it in the right way. So yeah, it works for me. I would like us to see a bit more longevity in terms of how long we have that funding for, though, so that we can really continue on the journey.
That's great. Really appreciate your feedback. We're going to a mayoral, now for the next round, and I'd love you to feed that bending of the rules slightly back to them. But thanks very much for your time.
Anytime, John. Thank you.
Indeed. So we've had 3 comments in the chat. You mentioned an evaluation report, and also someone's asked, Maria's asked, if there's any literature that you'd like sharing. So maybe I can suggest, if you're willing to send your slides and anything else that you have ready to go, that if people want to learn more about what's going on in GMCA, and I can send that out to all attendees and make sure everyone gets sight of it.
Absolutely. I will do that this afternoon for you, Jack.
Thanks, Sharon. Okay, going once, going twice on any last questions. If not, we'll wrap it up and give everyone 15 minutes back of their day. Nope, I think that's it. Well, thanks a lot, Sharon, and thank you everyone else who spoke today. I think it's been a really informative meeting, and obviously ERSA will go ahead and use the evidence that we've got today in our conversations in light of the budget and whatever comes after the budget, and hopefully, we do get an extension and all of this great work can continue. So thanks a lot, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.